Thank you all for being here so much. You know, the amazing thing about looking at every single one of you and your faces and your earnest hearts is that it's a really special calling to be called to healthcare. And I didn't understand how special until a few years ago. You're nodding your head. You understand it's such a special calling. And for those of us who were originally outside of healthcare, we never really got it. And I've gone on this journey of deeply coming to appreciate you. So tonight, I'm so grateful that you're here because we're going to celebrate your awesomeness and we're going to talk about ways that you can make your journey tolerable. You can make your journey more meaningful, and that you can find a way to get through some of the toughest things that any human would ever have to deal with, and you deal with them every single day. So it's a real honor to be speaking to you, and it's a real honor to, if there's even a teeny tiniest thing I can say tonight that helps you in any way, then we did good. So thank you for being here. And because I'm talking to clinicians, I thought, okay, I'm not going to use a lot of data, so I better use some big words. So it could have been really fluffy, but instead I said, you know what we're going to do this evening, sir? We are going to advance the paradigm of clinical care. Tell me, did any of you see that and go, oh, right? If I had talked to my regular friends, they'd be like, what the hell is a paradigm? So those are big fancy words, and we actually are going to do that, but that's not the total purpose of what we're doing. So I suggest you buckle up, because it's America. We're going to start with a disclaimer, and the disclaimer is life is messy. Every single one of us, our lives are messy, right? As we start this conversation, parts of our chat will be messy too. And in fact, your comfort zone may be stretched a little bit. You guys okay with that? So I thought to myself when I started with a disclaimer, I'm like, what's the opposite of a disclaimer? We don't really have one. And I went, of course, it's a proclaimer. The proclaimer is, it may be messy and it may be uncomfortable, but our life is worth it. And when you open to connection, your day in and out will matter way more. It will. It will. And you know what else? You're going to be able to minimize your burnout while also helping patients. But I want to be really clear. This is not a talk about enhancing patient care. This is not a talk about being more compassionate, because that's backwards. This is a talk about enhancing our care so that there's something we have to give to patients. So it kind of starts with a story. It's not an easy story. I'm going to get through it without tearing up at all because it's important to do this, but it is a little tough. So we had this really cute family, and we had our son Connor. He was about, how old were you? I think you were 4 years old, and we were so excited because we were having our second baby, and it turns out that she passed away on the day she was to be born. Ugh. You would think it's the worst day in your life, and it was really sucky. And somehow, well, when I first found out that there was no fetal heartbeat, I was like, okay, well, please, you'll do a C-section, right? Please. And they're like, no, you have to deliver your baby. So it was an 8-hour labor. You would think that would be the worst day in your life, right? Somehow, our nurses, our doctor, our CNA They didn't do anything special, but just the way they gently went about doing the clinical work of delivering that baby, we knew they felt us. We knew they felt it. And somehow, that was in the year 2000, so that was 18 years ago. When I remember that, it's like a warm blanket. It's the healing in the worst time of our life. Because they didn't do anything special, but they cared, and they were soft, and they were gentle. And, when we suffer through things, just knowing that somebody gets us, somebody feels it along with us, it's all we need. It's all we need. Strangely, just a few years later, in 2003, Gracie, my daughter, was here earlier. She's that little one in Robbie's arms. So she came about 18 months after we lost Angel, and she just barreled in, and she's like, I'm here, so you better buckle up, people. And she just took over the world, and he was utterly smitten with her. And for some crazy reason, shortly after we had lost baby Angel and Gracie was with us, she was 18 months old, we had restaurants, and we had this sweet little busy life, and 2 adorable freaking kids right there. And Robbie was a competitive hockey player. We had restaurants, and our hockey team was actually called the Wild Alaskans after our restaurant. And the whole hockey team that he played with were physicians in Reno. And we sponsored the team. So we did our little routine. We took our turns. One night he would read books to the kids to bed. The next night I did. And because it was a late game, Robbie took his turn. He read the books to the kids before they went to bed. And then he was walking out the door, and I was kind of getting things together, and we mouthed, I love you. And about an hour and a half later, I got a call that he had collapsed on the ice. And it was from a physician that was playing with him, and they said, we don't know what's going on. He's being transported. So I'm not going to go into the whole story because I'm holding it together really well right now. However, when I got to the hospital, I had a very different experience than when we had lost baby Angel. First of all, Robbie didn't have his insurance card. As far as I know, he had just been transported by hospital or by ambulance. And when I walked in, I had my insurance card ready, but they didn't need it. It confirmed what I knew. I knew that he hadn't made it. Just somehow I knew. So I don't know who the person was, but I said, I need to see my husband. And they said, well, you can't see your husband, but you can come into this room and then you can see your husband. Basically, they made me wait in this room with these harsh, cold lights for like 15 minutes until the poor social worker came to tell me that my husband had died. And I said, I understand you don't want me to make a scene, in this public place. I promise you I won't. Just please take me to my husband. But they wouldn't. They wouldn't until this lady walked in the door, and I said, I know my husband's died. Could you please take me to him? She's like, yes, we can. That's kind of messed up. Get in the room, and now he's been there a while. He's been transported there easily an hour by the time they made me wait 15 minutes, and he's still got the tubes in him, and and nobody, the wife's about to go in there. You would think maybe they could have cleaned him up a little bit. But that wasn't even the bad part yet. The bad part was, at whatever point of the night, the nurse comes in, she got a sheaf of papers, and she says, here's a list of funeral homes. Which one would you like the body transported to? And then the coroner came in and said, he was 47 years old, so he has to go through a full autopsy, but generally that takes 24 hours, but skeletal remains have gotten ahead of this case, so preliminary autopsy, 48 hours or so. I'm like, a case, skeletal remains, that's Robbie. That's him on Father's Day. Are you kidding me? So for years, I thought to myself, oh my God, these are the most heartless people I've ever met. Like, do they have a soul? But what I came to realize is they probably have the biggest hearts of anybody. They were helpless. They were helpless to do anything for me. They were helpless. They tried to save Rob and they didn't. They couldn't. They were helpless. What else are they going to do? There are these trained healthcare heroes. They're not trained help the widow through. And because they didn't know what to do, they couldn't do anything. They had to hold it all at arm's length. And honestly, working for 10 years in the hospital as I have, it's been the healing. It's taken me from like this feeling of sharp broken glass to like, okay, I get it. Like it's helped me feel more for them than for my pain of that night. Because imagine feeling that helpless, that you just didn't know anything to do to soften it even the littlest bit. I bet they really struggled that night along with me. So that's why we want to talk about this. It's good to talk about. And it's so easy to shift. And I believe that our caregivers who feel helpless want to shift. They just don't know how. So when we talk about paradigm, what that is, it's a shared understanding among scientists regarding a structure, regarding values, assumptions, right? It's how we determine what a discipline is. So we have a paradigm in medicine, but we also have these really deep shared values. So you can go onto any website for a medical school, nursing school, where you can become a phlebotomist, and do you know what the words are? Excellence. It's the pursuit of excellence. Am I right? Yeah, you're all shaking your head because you're all excellent. That's what you are. You are excellent, and that's what medicine is. It is excellent. And do you know what else? We exceed expectations. Medicine exceeds expectations. This is so ingrained in you. It is your core being. What's the last one? What does the last one say? Anyone? Solution focused. When I was there with Rob in that room, what was the solution? There was no solution. If you're excellent and your solutions focused, and that's where you've spent your energy and your time in your earnest desire, you got nothing. This is it. This is what we teach. This is what we align ourselves with. This is our paradigm. But it's not how you started. I talked to a lot of caregivers, and I found this on Google. It's probably copyright protected. We may not be able to include this. But I think this really says it. As a child, you wanted to be a superhero. That's why you became a healthcare professional, right? Help people, make a difference, fix things. This is why people are called to healthcare. And this is why you're heroic. You are healthcare heroes. So, a hero is a person idealized for courage, outstanding achievements, and noble qualities. They combat adversity through ingenuity, bravery, and strength. And you may not say that all about yourselves, but I would say that about every one of you. We are, the Paradise Campfire. Did you see the story about the nurse whose scrubs are on fire? Her scrubs are burning as she's loading patients into whatever vehicle she can as they're evacuating the hospital. That is combating adversity. You know what else? Someone recently pointed out. What's happening at her house? She lives in paradise. What's happening with her dogs? Her mom that she takes care of? What's happening with her 17-year-old daughter? She's putting it all aside to load these patients because they need her. Holy moly, you guys are heroes. Saving lives, it's what we do. We respond rapidly, we diagnose disease, we intervene surgically, we provide treatment, we prescribe and dispense medication. You save lives all the time. So basically what you are is you are big-hearted, high-bar heroes. There's a challenge with that, though. You're all freaking overachievers. And you're so competitive. Good God! That blew me away when I first got into hospital land. I'm like, they are so competitive. Holy moly. So, you may not know this about yourselves, but this is really key. A hallmark of an overachiever is the staking of identity based on outcomes. Am I right? They believe that people around them and they themselves judge worthiness on how well they do. So, it's kind of fascinating because you're in a line of work where no matter how brilliant you are, you don't have control over the outcome, do you? But that's completely how you judge yourself. Is there a little disparity there? Everyone I know feels this way. I hate the feeling when I really want to help, but there's nothing I can do. Right? All of us feel that way. I think healthcare heroes feel that more than anyone. But here's the crazy part. In addition to life-saving, do you see this list here? I mean, this is no news to any of you, but every single day, here, let's read the list. I have to keep up with advances. I have to treat sicker patients. I have to maintain professionalism with jerks. And there are a few. Occasionally in the ED, maybe? I don't know. Call me crazy. I have to implement ever-changing processes. I have to deliver excellent care despite bureaucracy. I have to deal with limited resources. And, oh, by the way, deliver a compassionate patient experience. No wonder our heroes are burning out. It is no wonder. In fact, the rate of provider suicides, it's really becoming a big concern. Now, there is a loss of heart in people all over the world. There is no question. But in terms of healthcare, climbing provider suicide rates, professionals leaving healthcare in droves, new nursing students 6 months in, they're out of here. Mounting frustration with barriers to delivering patient care. So the bottom line is this: long term, we have to figure out a better way. We have to restructure how we're doing things. But that's a big thing. It's every single day changing how we deliver medicine and making it easier for the caregivers to actually do patient care. That's long term. That's global. That's something we all have to do. But tonight, there's something you can do. You can do it in about 41 minutes that's going to help. It's going to help you immediately. And it's about filling your cup, which everyone here that I know likes to do that. All kinds of cups, but right now we're talking about Starbucks. Okay, sorry, later, well, I see a few glasses of wine here, but anyway, I digress. Who has ever been in a line at Starbucks and had somebody else buy their coffee? Anybody? Raise of hands? Okay, awesome. How did that make you feel? It was great. And it's such a surprise. It's like, wow, that's so cool. Okay, who here has ever bought coffee for all those random strangers? You can put your hand up. Don't be shy. Many of us. Well, I see your hand is up highest of all. Really? So tell me, what was it that inspired you? Why would you do that? Like, what was the genesis?
Well, I've had a few people buy my coffee in the drive-thru at Starbucks, and it's felt really good. And I think the last time I did it, it's been a while now, but I was in the Starbucks drive-thru, and it was right after there was a shooting in Dallas, and several police officers had died, and Carson City sheriffs were behind me, and I looked in my rearview mirror and thought, oh my God, was I on my phone? And then it's okay.
Am I buckled?
Am I buckled? And then
Am I speeding? Yeah.
I want to buy their coffee. I want to buy their coffee. So I did, and it was really nice.
So we don't really know how they felt about it. I mean, we imagine they probably felt really good. But for tonight, what's really helpful, how did you feel about it when you just randomly did just something of kindness like that?
Interestingly, I was excited to do that, and I left the drive-thru kind of patting myself on the back, like, oh, I did something nice today. I hope I made their day. It felt really good. I think I got more out of it than maybe they did.
Well, although they probably did as well. So I think what you're describing, how I experience it, I don't know how you experience it, but I think in this area that you didn't expect it, all of a sudden there was a moment of connection, like shared humanity. And when somebody out of the blue just does something kind for you, like you just feel a connection. And that's how we're wired as people. We're wired for connection. That's what we crave. It's what we need. It's what fuels us. So filling your cup, having those experiences is what we're talking about. And even the smallest thing of buying somebody a Starbucks, the ripples go out. The ripples for you. You've probably, not that I want to pressure you, but you've probably thought about doing it again. Or I hear your story and now I'm like, oh, I think next time I'm through the drive-thru, although I used to have a $7 a day coffee habit and now I'm doing all black and I brew at home, right, honey? Anyway, but the next time, if I'm ever in the drive-thru, I'm kind of inspired by that. So that's kind of a general out in the world example of what we're talking about, is that act of connecting, and it's intentionally doing so. You had intention to heal them. They're police. There was a big shooting. They probably feel a little raw. Your act of connection intended to heal them. So I have a story that I think really relates to this, and it's in our Behavioral Health Crisis Center, where our people in psychiatric crisis used to go to the emergency department. Now we have this great Mallory Behavioral Health Crisis Center. They can go there, they can be helped, they get exactly the care that they need. Well, recently there was a story. One of our nurses, she's just so beautiful, she doesn't need regular salon appointments. She needed to get her hair cut, so God forbid, she says to her son, honey, Google a salon for me. What lady does that, right? I'm just saying that's how gorgeous she is. So her son Googles her a salon. She's sitting in the chair. The lady's cutting her hair. Now, mind you, this crisis center has been open for about 18 months. She's getting her hair cut, and the lady says, oh my gosh, she looks so familiar. And she says, oh, I don't really know where I might know you from, and where do you work? Oh, I work at the hospital. Where in the hospital? I work in behavioral health. Oh, I have a story for you. Long story short, 18 months prior, the woman cutting her hair had been brought in by the sheriff to our crisis center. So if you're being brought in by the sheriff, it means you're being unruly in one shape or another. If we didn't have the crisis center, she'd probably be in the jail. But they brought her to the crisis center. She was only with us for 7 hours, probably enough time to sober up. And as she's sitting there, they were talking to her about resources. They were talking to her about options. They were talking to her about how great it is that she was brave enough to come and just be there. Because in behavioral health, they don't fix broken bones or do cath lab stuff or make these diagnoses and give you medications. Everything they do is not outcome-based. They can set the environment, but they can't control the outcome. Much like in hospice, you know your patients are not going to come out of this, so your care that you provide is about the humanity. It's about the connection. It's about what you might do for the person's soul. Anyway, she goes on to tell the story that, in fact, she was in a horribly abusive situation. She was now sober for 12 months. Her abuser had told her, no one's going to help you. They're going to judge you. You can't ever get help. You're never going to get clean. But when she was brought by the sheriff unwillingly, she had the exact opposite experience. She was surrounded by love, acceptance, got resources. 12 months sober, moved out of his house, and guess what else? Now her 7-year-old daughter is also free of that situation. Life is messy. They know that there, and their goal is to work with this part. And there's a little bit more of that we could all do when delivering clinical care as well. Because planting seeds of hope without attachment to the outcome is life-saving, even when it is a broken leg. We have no idea how our seeds are going to blossom for people. But planting seeds of hope is what a healer does. So, here's a big question. What if your passion could be revived and your burnout diminished? What if you could get that feeling again when you very first started out, before you were kind of beaten down by all the stuff and before you started protecting yourself because it's just too painful? Oops. Well, I think you can. And it's a funny example, but my lifelong example is my mom. And that is my mom right there. Obviously, I did not get her height. She's the tall, dark one. And here she is, a cover girl on Stars and Stripe magazine. She was the very first woman to sign up in World War II in the Navy for the group called the Waves. So Mary was always ready to report for duty, whatever that duty was. And then she had 7 kids. I don't know if you can pick me out. And then she was a total goofball. There was nothing like really special about Mary, except Mary had this crazy calling to make life better for everyone, wherever she was, however she could. And it really came home to me when we were in a grocery store. I'm like 13 years old, and the checker is so rude, and she's squishing our bread with the cans. And now, mind you, we've got 7 kids. We've got 2 huge grocery carts, and the lady's like throwing our food down the aisle, and I'm standing there outraged, like, and then my mom pays in cash. Remember that? Did you guys, have you? Yeah. I'm not really good at it anymore. I kind of like always try to use my debit card. But anyway, so there's my mom, and the lady takes her money, gives her change back, but almost throws it at her. I was outraged. And you know what my mom did? My mom genuinely touched her hand and said, I hope the rest of your day goes better. And I walked out the door and I'm like, she should have been fired. She needs counseling. Why didn't you tell her manager? And my mom said, imagine what must be going on inside for her. I would not want to add to that. I want to try to make it better. And that, don't we all? It's so easy for us to react and shut down and like everyone else is other, but they're not. We're all in this together. She was an innate healer, but she didn't have any special training. And people look at me and go, oh my gosh, how can you tell this story about your baby and your husband? And I'm like, it is so selfish. Honestly, right now, it's for me that I tell this story because you know why? If there's one micrometer of it that could help any other person who's ever in the emergency department, if there's one thing that fills your soul that you get from this when you leave, you have given me purpose. You have given me meaning. You have given purpose to Robbie passing away. I am the most selfish person you'll ever meet in your life. It's crazy. People don't get it. But doing that, it fills you. We don't need special certifications. Mary didn't need special certifications. I could probably use a few. I don't have any, but the thing is why not each of us? And if it's not each of us, who else is it? I don't know, does anybody else think the world's kind of messed up right now? Whether you're driving or you're at work or you're at the grocery store, it's just it's going crazy. But we can each make a difference in that crazy world. I know what you're saying. I ain't no saint. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Actually, he's right. I'm just guessing. Not really. I'm not a Dalai Lama. I'm not Mother Teresa. I'm not even a cute fuzzy therapy dog. Who am I to imagine that I could be a healer? I'm not worthy. And besides, I'm a clinician, not a magician. Anyone? Well, this is just a little example of how we are all healers. In our system, we do patient rounding, and we get to hear cool things that they say, and then we get to record them and send them to the provider or the nurse or whomever made a difference to a patient. And this one is a really cool one because a lady was talking about how thankful and touched she was by the care and kindness of the provider. She'd been overweight for some time, and she has never experienced a physician address her weight and health issues as kindly. The provider was truthful and direct, but the delivery and approach was the nicest she has ever experienced. Think about that. Especially when we're talking about obesity, there's so much judgment around all of it. Who knows why? Is it genetic? Was she molested? Is she just overeating? Who the hell are we to judge any of that? But we do. And we feel it when it's us being judged. So the thing is that we underestimate how the teeny tiniest little thing, how much power it is in the smallest act of caring has the potential of turning a life around. Just like our great hair cutting lady when she was at Mallory. it was just a small act of kindness, and it completely turned her life around. Because here's the thing. We're taught, you're taught, I wasn't taught, let's be really clear. I can barely do a Band-Aid. Clinicians are taught to heal the body, but 99% of the people I talk to, everybody believes in some form or another we have a soul. Whether it's your animating energy or whether you see it spiritually or whatever it is, there's something inside of us that's more than our body. And that human soul, it doesn't want to be advised or fixed or saved. It simply wants to be witnessed. What does that mean? When I was in the ED and she was handing me pieces of paper and she didn't know what to say, and she just called him a body, it felt like she had no idea that I had just lost my husband, and that really hurt. If she had just said, "I'm sorry to have to ask you, but could you?" Or even if she said, "I have no words," I would have felt like I was being witnessed. It's all we want. It's so simple. So it turns out you're not helpless. You're powerful beyond measure if you allow yourself to be as good as a therapy dog. I mean, come on. What special training do they have? Therapy dogs nowadays don't have any, right? In fact, if you want a little vest so you'll be empowered to be a healer, I think I might get some printed up. Okay, so the bottom line is, you guys that are in this profession, you've got to ask yourself why. With your brains and your fabulous good looks, and your ability to study and have intention and goals and achieve them, you could be anything you want to be. Anything. Instead, you know what you did? You did this crazy thing. You chose to serve at the crossroads of life and death, chronic disease, and broken humanity. There's something in you that chose that. That's crazy. That's why you're heroes. Why? Well, part of it is if your path is more difficult, it's because your calling is higher. I believe that. I believe every one of you has a really high calling, or you wouldn't be here. So we need to reclaim your calling. We need to connect you again about helping people and making a difference and being a fixer and not being overwhelmed by all the stuff that's broken. So it's really interesting to me because when you look up a definition of healer, a lot of it is really woo-woo, which would not work for this evening, but I found a definition just for you. A healer affects a person's internal forces in a therapeutic way. Can you get your arms around that? Right? It's therapeutic. You're affecting internal forces in a therapeutic way. You're helping someone become sound or whole. That's really cool too. So you are called to sow seeds of healing for yourself first, and then for your patients. Has everybody here been, right? We've all been on an airplane, and they always say put on your own oxygen mask first, and then you can help your child. I recently saw a video, the guy said, help your favorite child first, and then you can do your second. I'm like, oh my God, who would have my mother chosen with the 7 kids? I'd probably be Blue over in the corner, but whatever. So what this is, if you are ever in a hospital and they say, you need to be more compassionate, you can just say, oh no, I don't. What you need to be is more compassionate here. This is about filling you. That's where we start, because the result is you're naturally more compassionate to patients. So when you put on your oxygen mask, what that looks like is once you open to healing, you create connection, like at Starbucks. Connection brings meaning. All of a sudden, your day, it felt more. It wasn't just another drive to work. There was more depth and context and even if you didn't get a good parking spot, you were walking with a springier step. And meaningful work lessens burnout. It's like so simple that we overlook it. But it is really the way to get there. But how do we get there? It's so easy. You're going to go, it's too easy, I can't do it. It can't be meaningful if it's that easy. Surely it must take 12 months to master this. Well, it can. We're going to go over these steps in a general way to open the conversation, to open your mind to the idea of some of these things. But each one of these definitely has a whole other realm we could dive into. Tonight, we're just going to fly over. So, how you do it is you aim to heal. And aim to heal just means allow, intend, and melt. You'll be very glad to know, originally, these words were a little different. But see, in healthcare, everything becomes an acronym. So, permit, intend, and soften becomes PISS. And so oh yeah, I'm going to piss on it, and I'm going to piss all over. It just wouldn't have worked. So, I tried to think of my mom and what she would have wanted me to do, and so we're going to just aim to heal, okay? Same meaning. If you, in your mind, want to go there, you're welcome to, but not for these public talks, okay? Here's the deal. You need to give yourself permission. You need to allow yourself. Because unlike us mere mortals, y'all are healthcare heroes. You are proven to have the depth to do amazing things. You serve at the crossroads of life and death each day. You just need to show up. Stop buffering yourself. You can make a difference even when all else fails. You're not God. You can't control all the outcomes. If you do your best, you're off duty. You stop beating yourself up. You can't control that stuff. Allow yourself to be a force of healing regardless of the outcome. You need to embody intention. You need to intend. Just by intending, like Mary, she just intended to make things better for people. It's all she did. So how you intend is you're like, hey, I got this. I am better than a therapy dog. I can do this. I don't have to have special training. Grant yourself permission. Hold intention. Trust that this simple thing is life-saving. And then intend that your presence be healing. You don't have to do anything else. Oftentimes when somebody suffers a loss, people say, I didn't want to say anything because I didn't know what to say. One of the most beautiful things I've ever heard, because I think it's so true, is I have no words. If that's all you say, it means you've said something, you've witnessed. That's what people need. And then the last thing is to let yourself soften. You need to accept that living is messy. Suffering, loss, and pain is guaranteed. Here's the biggie. You need to distinguish what your role is and what destiny's role is. That's a biggie for you guys. Because you're superheroes. You're overachievers. You're excellent. You're solutions oriented. Okay, so the other two big things are, like my mom did in the grocery store, she recognized the innocence inside that person. Like often when I see people that are really angry and acting out, I always think, ugh, I wonder how their parents treated them when they were 6. You know, that doesn't happen in a vacuum. Our people that are suffering the most, think of them as a little child, and you'll start to soften. You feel it differently when you think about what may have brought them to this point. That is really helpful. Who here skis? Okay. The weirdest thing about skiing is our bodies want to lean back, right? If you lean back, you fall. How you ski is you lean into the mountain. You lean in, completely counterintuitive to what you think you should do. How you maintain your balance, how you race down that hill, it's by bending in. It's by leaning your face into where you're going, which is exactly the opposite of what we do in healthcare. Because once we start to hit the suffering, we start to armor up. Because how much suffering can one person take? But it's like skiing. It's just the opposite. The more you armor up, the more you are suffering. The more you just let it in and out, the more you are healing and you're filling yourself. Because you may have lost the patient, but you held the wife's hand. That will fill you. You just aim to heal. Allow, intend, and melt. Aim to heal. Allow, intend, and melt. That is really something. And then, where you started, AIM, there's a point pretty quickly where you don't have to allow anymore. You've become it. You realize one day, I am a healer. This is me. And many of you already do this so often, but it's doing it consciously. It's doing it every day. It's doing it with every patient. It's doing it before you open that curtain. I'm a healer. Walk in. There's nothing more required of you. It's the intention and the openness and the understanding that that therapeutic treatment of the soul is equally your calling. And then when you do that, you get to heal families like mine. Super cool. That picture on the left was, I think it was like 3 weeks after Robbie died. And the picture on the right is us last summer. And it's every step of the way, it's been all those little things that every person has done for us to witness our suffering, give us the blanket, and we all come through and we all suffer. It's just life. And realizing that that is as much as the joy. It's the yin and the yang. It's the black and the white. It's the good and the bad. That's our life. Look at how we're born. Like we could get keys and just pop out, but oh no. It is a crazy process, and it shows us The most miraculous, most beautiful thing that happens through the birth process is also one of the most painful, gut-wrenching, torturous. That's our life. We don't need to separate that one is worthwhile and I'm going to focus on it, and the other I need to keep away at all cost. So as a nation, while we chip away at trying to figure out how we're going to restructure things so that this is sustainable, that we don't just keep dumping and dumping and dumping on our caregivers and say, hey, you guys are overachievers, you got this. We're getting to a point where our caregivers are like, I can't do it anymore. We have got to recognize that, and we have got to do something. And there's slow movement towards that. But in the interim, you can make your tomorrow better. You can feed your soul. You can become a force of healing. Thank you so much.